in. We are also aware that the public is following this press conference by the presiding officers of Parliament from various online platforms, YouTube. We are also live on our Twitter account. We are live on Parliament channel 408 on DSTV. We are also live on the SABC. And we've got a lot of journalists who have joined us from Parliament-based journalists, as well as all over the country. You are welcome. The presiding officers of Parliament have called this press conference to make an announcement with regard to the resumption of business. As you will be aware that in March, the presiding officers took a decision to suspend the business of Parliament in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And therefore, today, the presiding officers have called you to make an announcement with regard to how Parliament will be operating. So I'm going to ask that we continue to mute our mics, and you only unmute it when you speak. I must also indicate that when it is time for question and answers, we are requesting that members of the media forward their questions on the WhatsApp group. Those members of the media that have confirmed their participation in this press briefing, we have asked that they do so through this WhatsApp group. They are members of the parliamentary WhatsApp group. Others who cannot do so, there is what we call an icon below your picture on the screen is a message chat. You can also type your question there, and we will monitor those questions, and I will convey them to the presiding officers. So the presiding officers, they are led by the National Assembly Speaker, Mayor Thandi, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, and that Amos Masondo. And then we also have the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, that Zenodi, and the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, Ms. Sylvia Lucas. So I'm going to ask that the Deputy Speaker present the statement of the presiding officers, and thereafter we will invite any questions. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Lord. And good afternoon to members of the media. Welcome to this press briefing. I'm going to walk you through this brief statement, and do not mind if we state some blinding glimpses of the obvious, some areas we have gone through before. Last month, we took a decision to suspend the program of the two houses. The decision was taken before the start, coincidentally, of the constituency period. In other words, we were meant to go for recess at that time. As a direct response relating to the COVID-19 issue, and so drastically limiting the number of people both in the House then and in the precincts of and offside of activities of the legislature. As presiding officers, Chief Whip, political party representative, we agreed that the remaining House sittings on the 18th and 19th March would be only time-bound matters. And so members of now fall under the category of essential services in terms of the regulations. Notwithstanding the suspension of the program until further notice, constituency work by individual members of parliament within the communities they represent continues, in fact, up to the 13th of April. The presiding officers of both houses of parliament have been assessing the situation. In fact, following the declaration of the disaster, as well as just before the lockdown, all the practices also globally about how others are handling this matter. But they have consequently taken a decision that the business of parliament must resume with immediate effect following conclusion of the constituency program. The leave period for MPs, which was scheduled between 28th and 4th May, has been cancelled, effectively meaning that during that period, there are things that will be taking place. The Constitution requires that Parliament scrutinize and oversee the executive actions, especially during this period, to provide a forum for public consideration of issues and to facilitate public involvement in the matter of the legislature. So the role of Parliament during this period of national lockdown and the extended period of social distancing, which is expected to continue for months, remains indispensable. It's not suspended. So the current period, which all sections of society are responding to the pandemic, calls for radical alteration and adjustments to the normal way of functioning. For Parliament, it has never been a more important time to work in an extraordinary manner and intensify our technological abilities and capabilities for our transition to an e-Parliament, as also directed by the new strategic plan to come, to ensure that the execution of our constitutional responsibilities continues uninterrupted, even during a disaster. Parliament has been putting in place and accelerating the information communication technology infrastructure and abilities to ensure what we've just said takes place. In the past few days, a number of virtual meetings have taken place. You are aware of the health committee meeting chaired by its chairperson, Dr. Masondo, took place. They include also of us presiding officers meeting fresh issues, including the forum of chief whips also took place. These meetings have considered of course, the necessary consequential amendment of the framework for going ahead with the program of Parliament during this period, which is an adjustment naturally. As we resume the business under prevailing conditions, we will prioritize, obviously, a number of committee meetings whose scope and oversights relate to the interdepartmental coordination that's taking place as a response. These meetings will be required to intensify their oversight, and obviously with a focus on COVID-19. For ease of obviously doing work under these conditions, these meetings relating to COVID-19 and the briefings thereabout will be joined between the National Assembly and the NCOP. The chief whips naturally meeting in Parliament, we are briefed. We have also agreed to look at the draft guidelines and rules as considered by the presiding officers on virtual meetings and so on. So these guidelines and procedures and so on of periods like these are only in the beginning and will be fashioned appropriately as our experience grows. It is inevitable that sittings of the two houses will have to take place in the manner suggested already. and with the rules that are appropriately that the presiding officers have considered. This will deal with matters needing approval for consideration urgently by the two houses. This matter of questions, written replies, oral questions, and so on, members of will also feature, but this is under consideration for how best to deal with them properly. And information about this will be made available. And the critical one, for all intents and purposes, is the Division of Revenue Bill, which is before the National Council of Provinces. And it is also going to be handled through public involvement and, of course, by public submissions regard to that Division of Revenue. And this will be happening virtually, as we've already explained. It is envisaged, give or take, that this bill will be passed around the 2nd of June. We are mindful of the possible revision of the budget by the Minister of Finance, by the executive broadly, in the wake of this pandemic. And we are, in a sense, beginning to think about how we are going to do that. Naturally, the discussions will take place with the executive to understand the details of this matter. We also wish to state that we support fully what the president and his team in the executive have done so far. That they have led the nation through this campaign, and those in the healthcare, law enforcement, the defense, and essential goods retail sectors who are risking their lives to defeat this novel virus require our commendation. We also extend our gratitude to millions of South Africans and residents in our country who continue to heed the president's call at home. And this selfless contribution to combating the spread of this deadly virus. We ought to also express our condolences to those who have lost their lives in our country and elsewhere. It is said that we must have lost them in the manner in which they have through this virus. Our condolences to those families. As presiding officers, we've also decided to support the good initiatives for the Solidarity Fund, and therefore we offer that we too, as these presiding officers here, will contribute 1/3 of our salary for the 3 months, in the next 3 months. So that's the practical ending of the statement with an indication of that. The other parties in Parliament are discussing how they are going to do this, and so they will, at the right time, announce what they are going to do. Thank you very much. Ademuloto, I hand back to you.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Is there any remarks from the other presiding officers before I open the floor for questions from the media?
Not from me.
Okay. Chairperson, Deputy Chair? Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm just going to, I see on the WhatsApp group, I do not see any questions that have been forwarded. The statement will be released very soon, will be forwarded to the media. But perhaps let me just on this, okay, I'm trying to check the questions. Okay, perhaps just to give an opportunity to the media, if there is any question on this platform that they want to forward.
Hi, Moloto. Can we ask over Zoom or would you prefer us to WhatsApp?
I think just go ahead now.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much.
On WhatsApp, there is no question,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm just giving an opportunity to come in. But once you are done asking a question, please mute your mic so that the person can be able to respond.
Thank you very, very much, Moloto. Hi, good afternoon. It's Marielle Merton from the Daily Maverick. We've just had a briefing up in Pretoria by some of the ministers, and certainly what the cooperative governance ministers seem to indicate that we are looking towards a phased exit from the lockdown after the 30th of April. With regards to Parliament, has any thoughts been put to how Parliament would be preparing itself to resume once the lockdown has been lifted? Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. I also see a question from Alastair Curry. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm sorry. The question to the presiding officers is how will the revised budget affect the infrastructure programs? I believe this is in reference to the budget by the Minister of Finance that is before Parliament, particularly the National Council of Provinces. And then there is a question from Andisiwa Makinana. The question is, I would like to know how the public will be notified of the meetings. Will it be via Parliament's communication or the Z list? That is in view of the slightly amended rules to take into consideration remote working by Parliament. I'll just close it there as the first set of questions for the presiding officers to deal with, and then we'll come with another round of questions as I receive them from the WhatsApp group.
Okay. Who's going first? Presiding officers?
Just to say that maybe I should say greetings to everyone. On the question of how the matters of the budget are going to be dealt with, the sense that we have after a consultation is that the normal budget process will be followed, but that soon after decisions are taken by Parliament and the NCOP, there'll be space to look at possible supplementary interventions. So what one can say is that post the approval of the budget, matters related to this question in relation to supplementary interventions will then be examined with the view of seeking to ensure that the best possible interventions are made as we move into the future. The phased exit is just that. It is phased, and will be seeking through Parliament to ensure that whatever changes are made, they're such that they keep into mind the need to keep distances, the need to ensure that health difficulties do not arise, and that if they do arise, they're kept to the barest minimum.
Can I come in?
Not over you.
No, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Madam
Okay.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, you can go ahead. My mic was off.
Okay. I just wanted to add where Ndati Masondo left off, that in fact we have what we call as Parliament the Business Continuity Plan, which also even though we work on it separately from the executive, also looks at a phased-in return to work by the two houses of Parliament. Because we are aware that we cannot, if lockdown is called off tomorrow, all rush back to work, that we need to take certain precautions so that we do not encourage reinfection and rebulging of the COVID-19 amongst us again. So the Parliament has been, in the last 2 weeks, we've been working on a plan where we will also phase in our resumption of duty. On the issue of the budget, the question actually says, how is it, if there is a supplementary budget, going to affect the infrastructure? We don't know where and how the executive will make the adjustments, and therefore we do assume that whatever adjustment that the executive will be making will be in the interest now of ensuring that health is given as much resources as it can to ensure that we save lives in South Africa. That is for Parliament the most important thing, that lives of our people must be secured, that the necessary equipment, the necessary medication, spaces are found to ensure that we do not lose more lives. But also that there is also a budget that goes into securing food for those who are without food and shelter. The last question was, how will the public be appraised or the media be told about the meetings? I think the usual parliamentary channels will inform the public. We are hoping that the public broadcaster, the SABC, will come to the party, that it will also be used as an information and public arm of the state to inform the public of whatever events that we might be having as Parliament. But also, Moloto, I think you are best placed to respond to this. That communication from Parliament must continue as usual. What we are also looking at is how you make sure that the public voices reach us in such a way that we are not risking anybody's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Is there any response to the other presiding officers?
No.
Okay. Yes, indeed, you're correct, Madam Speaker. Parliamentary Communication Services will continue to publicize the programs and all the activities of the two houses, as well as the committees during this time, using all the platforms that we have, Parliament Channel 408, our YouTube channels, because we have got several YouTube channels that can run concurrently to broadcast the business of Parliament, and all other platforms, social media. So the public will definitely be kept abreast of all the activities as they unfold during this time. So even now we are broadcasting live to the rest of the public while we are having journalists participating in this virtual press conference. I'm just going to, with your permission, presiding officers, to the next round. There is a question from Simnikiwe Zigandava. I think they will want, he is interested, or she is interested to know about what ICT platforms in particular Parliament will be employing during this period to conduct its business. And also there is a question from Yandi Lange. We will want to know if it is possible for the for the work that was before the Constitutional Review Committee, the appropriate committee regarding the Section 25 amendment. Will that work continue? This is in relation to the amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution. There is also a question from Baba Londenze regarding the 19 bills that are before the National Assembly, if they will be dealt with during this period. I think the last question, I think this other question from Ali, it is responded with regard to the participation of the public and the involvement of the public through the broadcast of these meetings, and I've already touched on that. Yeah, I think Vuyan Green, that will be the last for this round, is asking how will the plenaries deal with the oral questions to the president? Thank you, Presiding Officers. That is the second round of questions from the media.
Well, the Muloto, you.
Deputy Speaker, just to interrupt before you go on, I get reminded that the colleagues in the media have asked that you move a little bit away from the camera so that they can be able to see you properly. But not too much.
Okay.
Yeah, not too much, yeah.
What do they want to see? Okay. Is it okay?
Yeah, I think you can proceed. Now? Yeah, you can proceed as long as you don't come too close to the screen, yes.
No, I wanted to say that you referred to some of the platforms on which information will be communicated. The reference to which specific platforms, those we will, those are going to, for internal purposes, but also those that will include others, those that we are using now, like right now as we speak. This is one of the ways in which we will use. There are others that members of the media are familiar with. We will be exploring each one of them and using them as the Portfolio Committee on Health used the other time. And these are different ones. So those can be really understood. They are publicly known platforms that are going to be used. We will see the most appropriate for whichever ones we think it's okay. And talking about phased lifting of the lockdown, in a sense. We've discussed questions of quorum, and where appropriate, opportunities will be created to ensure that slowly, but as slowly as the campaign around this environment allows us, so that we don't make the mistake opening up too quickly, because the World Health Organizations even remarked about the speed with which we must go back. Our own experts are also warning that we should be slow in returning to the way in which we operated before. So we will explore the possibilities for limiting the number of people who can attend meetings, those who can come in, but use as much of the electronic platforms as we can have access to. That will enable many more people to be linked to the work that we are doing, including using radio communication as well, so that in the various languages in the country, people are able to engage in the work that they might be invited to participate in. So that's the one area that I thought. At the moment, we are prioritizing COVID-19 related intervention so that we get rid, or we deal with those expeditiously, but also mindful of those that are critical, such as the budget and the appropriations, which, as is already indicated, may be adjusted. So those are going to be the priority. Those committees, such as the constitutional review, are going to have to assess, because of the nature of the period in which we are operating, it may be difficult, but chairpersons are going to be making their own observations and deciding which part of their program and the timelines that are involved needs to be handled. Those that can usefully be postponed to later will be postponed to later, according to the observations and assessment by chairpersons of the work that is before them, including on various pieces of legislation and so on. If it is not urgent that we deal with those things now, chairpersons will make that observations and will advise us that they will deal with them at a later stage. The priority focus now is all our ducks must be in the row in working against the virus and limiting its negative impact, not only from a health perspective, but from an economic perspective as well. And so we await with great interest the announcements that are going to emerge relating to the further economic interventions that will strengthen our ability to rebuild the economy and plant seeds now of good and sound recovery in the foreseeable future, because things are going to be difficult to follow old patterns. So now we are also seeking to learn as much as we can from the experience of people in the economy and those who work socially, what the campaign around the virus have exposed a lot of complex, difficult issues, which must be managed differently. But also, at least, what is useful is the level of collaboration and cooperation that is becoming the modus operandi, the way of doing work, both inside government and outside of government. This is a very powerful lesson that we hope we will incorporate in the work also of Parliament and how it approaches doing its work. This kind of collaboration and cooperation do not only minimize the resources that are required to do things, but also maximizes the wisdom from which we can draw valuable insights in tackling these problems and others that we have been dealing with for some time now, such as inequality, poverty, and so on, because they have been brought into sharp focus by this virus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Yes, the Deputy Chairperson.
Yeah, I was listening to the response that the Deputy Speaker was saying, and I was actually I just wanted to add that we have also decided that we need to sit down with the leader of government business, particularly with regards to the issue of outstanding legislation like the bills that was just mentioned, to sit down and also to assess with regards to the issue of the bills that are before both houses, how we are going to deal with it to make sure that we finalize the lawmaking process. As we have discussed and concluded once again, that lawmaking, oversight, as well as public education and participation is the important areas where we need to focus on. And ordinarily, Parliament will be now in a stage where the committees would have been busy working. So we have, and I want to agree with what the Deputy Speaker said, we have agreed that we need to focus on the COVID-19 disaster as it is currently unfolding. And that is why the oversight committees that is directly connected to the specific disaster will be the ones that we will give preference to. Not that we are going to neglect other issues that we need to address, but we think we need to actually decide what is more urgent currently and then attend to the things that are urgent. But I want to confirm also, and I want to actually emphasize the fact that with regards to making sure that there is public participation and the community involvement, particularly the issue in our communication plan, besides all the virtual platforms that we can use is the issue of community radios and making sure that it is accessible, that the information is accessible by the members of the public. That is what is important for us as the presiding officers of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. Any?
There is an outstanding question. Through you, Ntate Moloto, to Ntate Buyane. We have received a recommendation from the Chief Whips Forum of the National Assembly to have a virtual sitting for oral questions for the executives to respond to questions. We are looking into this recommendation. We are also getting in touch with the leader of government business on whether or not it is possible, given that the most burning oral questions that we would want and we expect would come from Parliament would be around the issues of COVID-19. So as soon as we have had that discussion with the leader of government business, we'll be able to say, yes, we can go ahead with session or sessions of oral questions or otherwise. So far, we can just say that we are in consultation over this matter.
Speaker, just last question from Lindsay from ENCA. Is saying, will the Speaker be reconsidering the establishment of the panel to consider the public protector when the business resumes, or will that be put on hold for now? That is Lindsay from ENCA.
That matter, I know, is of very, very important public interest. But that matter was put on hold because we had to deal with COVID-19. When we are back, that matter will be back on for consideration, and we will advise what will then happen. You'll remember that the DA's original motion was withdrawn and replaced with another motion. You will also remember that at the time when we were supposed to appoint the panel of experts, this matter came up. So the panel of experts who will determine whether or not there is a case for the public protector to respond to has not been appointed. We will be looking at the recommendations which have come from the parties anew. And yes, as soon as it is practical, we will then go back to that matter. But for now, we do think that South Africa must focus on the business of saving the lives of South Africans. And that matter is important, but not that important for this period.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, the Speaker of the National Assembly. As I've indicated, colleagues from the media on the WhatsApp group, I think we have exhausted your questions. I have indicated with regard to the question by Andrew Makinana as to when is the schedule of committee meetings, virtual meetings of committees going to be publicized. I've indicated that it is being done, and as soon as it is concluded, it will be publicized through the normal public communication platforms of Parliament. So I'm closing this virtual press briefing, and I'm thanking the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Chairperson of the NCOP, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, and the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP for having presided over this press conference to engage and interact with the public and the media with regard to the issue of the program of Parliament. And I thank you, colleagues from the media, for joining in. Of course, there's been some technical glitches here and there. This is the first of many, and the presiding officers have been using this platform for a while now, and to deal with the business of Parliament, the planning, etc. And this is how we will be continuing to communicate with you during this period. And thank you very much for having joined in, and thank you very much for the presiding officers. The press conference is closed. Deputy Speaker, the reason why they wanted you to shift a little bit back, because you wanted to know, as Bungalo from Newsroom is saying that your head appears quite big on a big screen. When so it's not me. I was just giving the.
Bungalo, please be polite in this COVID-19 period.
So he says that on a 55-inch screen, it appears quite big, so he wanted you to shift it. It's not me. I'm just a message.
Mulato, can we use you to ask everybody to stay safe, to stay home, to self-isolate as much as possible until we see each other again?
Yes. Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, Chair, you want to say for the final word?
No, just thanking the speaker for reminding us during this period to keep to the basics and to ensure that we make a positive contribution in fighting the scourge of Corona.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much, presiding officers, and thank you very much, colleagues from the media. The press conference comes to an end and is closed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mulato.
Thank you, Mulato.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, presiding officers.
Bye, dear.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Deputy, switch off.